Wagner's campaign in Russia is officially over. And I think a lot of people are a little confused as to what the heck just happened. Now, there's going to be people out there who say this was totally fake, this was a psyop, we all fell for it. But I don't know how accurate that is, considering there were 12 Russian pilots who were taken out and didn't make it, which means Wagner meant business, and they were really trying to get to Moscow. But nonetheless, as you can see from this video here, these are people cheering, and let me give you guys some audio. Okay, so the reason why these people are cheering is because the campaign of Wagner is over and the Russian people are free. So this is in Rostov, Russia. And yeah, so let's sort of explain what's going on. Right now, everything that happened with Wagner is getting slated. Russia is saying, look, no one's getting charged. However, the other half of Wagner, who had nothing to do with this campaign, so it never happens again, everyone is signing a contract with the Ministry of Defense. Okay, so right here is the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, and here's officially what he said about Wagner and the Wagner fighters who were trying to take over Russia. Charges against Prigozhin will be dropped. He will leave Russia and go to Belarus. We'll get to that in a second. Wagner fighters that did not take part in rebellion will sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense. Could you imagine being a Wagner fighter who's getting paid 3 times more than a regular Russian soldier? You have some of the most elite training out there. You're definitely way more experienced than a lot of other regular soldiers, and now all of a sudden you're joining the Ministry of Defense. Wagner fighters that did take part will not be charged. That is a very important and critical area here. They will not be charged, but I think things will be a little awkward. Again, it looks like Russia is just like, okay, everything you guys did, it's all right. We hit you guys with some drama. You're hitting us with some drama. Let's just end it here. Now, an interesting side note down here, it looks like Shoigu will keep his job. The reason why that's relevant, just so you know, Mr. Shoigu is in charge of the Russian military. Shoigu was blasted all over state television, all over the internet. All the Russian people know that Shoigu stinks at his job. The issue is Mr. President Putin needs Shoigu to be his right-hand man because him and Shoigu are on the same page. They both used to work for the Soviet Union and under the Soviet Union, and they have this image before they leave this world and go into the afterlife. They want the Soviet Union to be a thing. So again, Shoigu was blasted all over state television that he stinks at his job. Now, I noticed a lot of you are late to the Wagner party. Wagner has been around for a while now, and it's not like they are all just hanging out in Russia and Ukraine. These guys predominantly operate in Africa, and there are a lot of Wagner members within Africa. So Russia is very fortunate these guys didn't come out of Africa and come straight up to Russia. Now, the part I'm a little confused about, how exactly are you going to get all of these guys to sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense? If anything, I would definitely not be doing that because who knows what's going to happen. You're going to be sent to a terrible unit. You're going to be sent to a trench digging unit. So it's going to be interesting how Russia deals with the Wagner group operating out of Africa. Because again, what you guys need to know is PMCs under Russian law, private military companies, it's illegal. You're not even supposed to have that under any Russian court of law, anything. So Wagner was already a disaster waiting to happen. They were just lining the pockets of Russia out of Africa. So if anything, this is great news for Africa. And what's also really interesting, they operate in Venezuela, South America. So are these guys just going to go ahead and fly back to Russia and then all of a sudden be on the front lines of Ukraine? I don't know what's going to happen with that. Okay, so here's where things get beyond confusing. Why is Belarus even involved with any of this? Belarus is like Russia's best friend, aka their boyfriend. When it comes to Belarus, they have to do whatever Russia says. Now, what's interesting about all of this, Prigozhin is boys with the president of Belarus. And one other thing I want to add, Mr. Prigozhin, head of Wagner, he's friends with a lot of key leaders within the Russian military, within the Russian government, and of course the president of Belarus. Now, what happened was there was a deal negotiated. The president of Belarus said, look, you need to stop what you're doing because you're just going to end everything we've worked for. And if you're going to be a hypocrite if all of a sudden you're going to take out your fellow Russians because you were blasting Russia for doing the exact same thing you're doing. So essentially, I guess he's going to seek asylum in Belarus. We don't know exactly what the details are, but what we do know is he's going to be going to Belarus. Now, is he going to lose the protection of his entire military? I would feel a little awkward going to Belarus and hoping that they will protect him because, again, they have to do whatever Russia says. Now, as far as the conflict in Ukraine, things are probably going to progress. I think Ukraine was hoping this was going to be their key moment to take land, and Russia was going to withdraw troops back to Moscow, take away their armor divisions, take away their artillery, and then Ukraine can push to Crimea and do what they have to do. But unfortunately, I think the fighting will commence. Ukrainian leadership needs to figure out whether or not how legit this was. In my opinion, I think this was completely legit. Right here, you actually have a Wagner fighter who was pleading with the Russian military, hey, come on our side. We're here to work with you guys. We want to take over this entire coup. But again, the unfortunate news is I'm sure within the next few days, all of the fighting happening in Ukraine, it's probably going to commence per usual. Whether or not Ukraine capitalized on the downfall of Russia, we don't know yet. We're not getting too many reports out of Ukraine. Like, not that much has changed out of Ukraine. I don't know if Putin can trust anyone ever again, and I think Putin will have to reanalyze how he operates in Russia. If he's actually going to be chilling in Moscow anymore, because I think there was a realization that Wagner almost got to Moscow with not necessarily a ragtag military, but they did it really quick. I mean, they were operating down the highways, and they were taking out aircraft, helicopters, jets, things like that. And they were able to influence Russian military members to go fight for Wagner, which means that the cracks are showing. It shows that the Russian military does not necessarily trust the Russian leadership and does not necessarily trust Mr. Shoigu, let alone Putin. Now, something that has not been talked about a lot is the lack of response from China, which I find fascinating. Typically, China is very quick to denounce anything, but China is in the same position as Russia, where nothing bad ever happens. Nothing ever happens. The jet that fell out of the sky, that never happened. What are you talking about? Did you just say something bad about me? We're going to make you disappear. And many people speculate that China was just hoping everything would fizzle out, and I would assume, worst case scenario, they were ready to send in troops to go back their boys Putin, because China's success is reliant on Putin doing his thing. Like, they are boys, and they're both going to be backing one another. Now, another theory out there is that China was hoping Russia would fall apart, and China would be the saviors of Russia. I don't think that would have happened because the Russian people are strong, and I think they would have probably been like, heck no, we're not going to let China take over. So, okay. This is essentially the end of everything. If you're new here, my name is T-SPLY. I've actually been covering Wagner for a while now, more specifically in Africa. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like Wagner's done. Operations in Africa are done. I don't know. Like, Russia heavily relies on Wagner for their successful clandestine operations. So, and they also rely on Wagner to train their special forces, Spetsnaz special forces. So we'll see what happens. If there's any more Wagner updates, I'll be sure to make more videos on it. But this seems to be the end of a chapter that no one saw coming. Everyone thought it was going to be fake for the first 30 minutes, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is real. So yeah, that's the end of the Wagner coup. We'll see you later.